The odds may seem stacked against them in a loaded AFC, but I really believe this is the best iteration of the New England Patriots that Bill Belichick has assembled since Tom Brady left. And they might be better than you expect. Welcome in, everybody, to the Patriots Deep Dive, where today they come in with the 16th spot in my 2023 NFL Power Rankings. That 16th ranking is a spot that many have voiced already feel is a little bit too high. And I'm just really excited to get into what some of the underrated aspects of this team are. Of course, where some of their questions lie as well. But before we get started here, if you could do me a huge favor, please do hit that like button down below. A ton goes into this series. It's all I really have time for this summer, so it's really important to me that these videos do well to help this channel grow. And by you hitting that like button, it really does go a long way. So I really appreciate it. Takes just a second. And make sure you subscribe if you enjoy. You're not going to want to miss any of these deep dives as we continue leading up to my number one team ranked into next season. But without further ado, let's get started. As always, taking a look at this team's offseason, their key departures and additions. And this is going to be the first area of optimism for me for the Patriots. I think they quietly had a really nice offseason. Not that they made a bunch of insane signings or anything, but just to kick things off, they are going to let Matt Patricia go and bring in Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator. I think this is the biggest upgrade that any team in the AFC East made other than the Jets getting Aaron Rodgers. Bill Belichick thinking that Matt Patricia could run his offense last year is perhaps the biggest blemish on Bill Belichick's insane career resume, and it went about as bad as we possibly could have imagined. And they bring in Bill O'Brien, who's familiar with this team, started his NFL career really with the Patriots, and for all of his flaws as a general manager in Houston, he's a really good offensive coach. So that's huge. That alone is a massive net positive for this team's offseason. But when you look at the roster changes, really just planned losses across the board that this team isn't really going to feel. They let Jacoby Myers go. Okay, he was redundant with Kendrick Bourne, who's still on this team, and they bring in Juju Smith-Schuster, who can do everything Myers can do from the slot and even more on the outside. They let Jonnu Smith go, who just was never a great scheme fit here. They bring in Mike Gesicki, who I think will be a much better route runner as that slot wide receiver for them. They do let Isaiah Wynn go. He really was a problem for them last year. It's understandable why they felt it was time to move on. And they bring in Riley Reiff, who's a nice Band-Aid at right tackle. That's at least a push. And then they let Damian Harris go. Okay, good back, but they're ready to go with Ramondre Stevenson. Some change at punter with Jake Bailey and Michael Pilardi leaving, bringing in Corliss Waitman and Bryce Baringer. Okay. The one thing you look at here that says it might be a downgrade is that free safety spot where Devin McCourty is going to retire finally here at like 36 years old. You know, they're bringing everybody back on this defense. And I say that because McCourty has been that captain over the top of the defense, gets everybody lined up in the right spot. That, to me, is where he's going to be missed the most, but I think they're prepared for this, given the fact that the entire defense is coming back, and they have now a couple safeties that have been in this system for years. And, you know, McCourty's play on the field was still solid, but as the free safety in this defense, definitely didn't have the range he once did. So that's the one spot you look at and say maybe they downgraded the roster, but if that's the worst thing you have to say, it's a good offseason. Any other losses they had include Nelson Aguilar, okay, whatever. Yanni Kajust, a backup tackle. Raekwon McMillan, a backup linebacker, also went down, headed to the IR here in practice. So there's your losses, and then you go to the big additions, and you know, we have already mentioned a lot of the stuff they did, especially in the offensive side of the ball. Bill O'Brien comes in to be an upgrade as the offensive coordinator. Juju Smith-Schuster comes in to be an upgrade at wide receiver. Mike Gesicki at tight end. Riley Reiff at offensive tackle, being at worst neutral with what they had from Isaiah Wynn last year, who only played 423 snaps. None of these massive investments in terms of draft capital or salary cap, but all sound moves and good additions to the offense. They also brought in Anthony Firkser as tight end depth and Calvin Anderson as offensive tackle depth, along with day three interior offensive linemen, highlighted by Sidy Sow, and then two interesting sixth-round receivers as well, Demario Douglas and Keyshawn Boutte. And then defensively, they're much more just kind of running this thing back. This defense really came on late last year, but they do go defense heavy in the draft. In the first round, they bring in Christian Gonzalez to upgrade the cornerback room. Second round, they go Keon White to be a versatile interior defensive lineman. And then Marte Mapu, more versatility in that second level of the defense with the linebacker / safety hybrid coming in. Going to be much more of a linebacker for them as he's up to like 230 pounds already. So I really like this Patriots offseason, mostly just addition by subtraction on top of a couple good free agent moves and a really nice draft. When I look at their positional movement chart, 5 spots being upgraded, the coaching staff, wide receiver, tight end, cornerback, and I'm going to argue for interior defensive line as well, just with Keon White coming in. And Christian Barmore is an awesome player that missed the middle half of last season. Getting him back fully healthy, I think that interior D-line will be better. Only one position being downgraded, and that is just on paper at the safety position with Devin McCourty retiring, but a manageable downgrade. And then at kicker punter, it's just unknown with like 4 moving parts there. They've got a big competition with both the kicker and the punter, and everything else stayed neutral. But next, I want to take a look at this coaching staff. And, I still have the absolute utmost respect for Bill Belichick. I know these last couple years haven't been perfectly clean, and there's been some questionable like GM style decisions, especially with like what happened with Matt Patricia last year. And he deserves plenty of criticism for that. But as far as what he is as a head coach and a defensive coordinator, I mean, I don't know if this is takey or not, but I'm still impressed by the job he's done after Tom Brady left. They've been trying to get the offense to catch up with the defense, and even the defense has been building up to, I think, this year where they finally have the roster talent to play like that premium defense. But the first year with Mac Jones, they won, 11 games, made the playoffs. Last year, they quietly went 8-9 when nobody was talking about him, despite suffering a lot of injuries. That first year with Cam Newton was a joke of a roster, and they still won like 7 or 8 games. Like, no, they haven't been winning playoff games and competing for a Super Bowl in the last few years. They're trying to build up towards that. But I still watch this team's tape and say, yeah, that's the best coached defense in the NFL. Bill Belichick has an archive inside of his brain, an archive of answers for every single problem that he gets thrown at as a defensive mind, and it shows. And I still also believe in the culture that he's established in New England over the last 20 years to earn a lot of benefit of the doubt. And sure, some of that luster of the Patriots dynasty has been lost, but I still view him as a tier 1 coach in terms of coach and culture for this series, and certainly tier 1 for defensive coaching. As far as what Bill's scheme is going to look like with Gerard Mayo and his son Steve underneath him, it's really evolved into a new look Belichick style defense, and you can't really name it any one thing. Bill's always been very multiple, but at the core of it, it's a 3-3-5 front. And I love how you can kind of trace it back to his adjustments to that Rams offense when they won the Super Bowl in like 2018, I think it was, where they went to a 6-1 front to really stop the wide zone. Belichick is always looking at league trends and adapting his scheme to stop those. And now kind of a 5-1 base front, plugging up every gap against wide zone has been a very good solution for the Patriots in the run, being one of their most run base fronts. But it's not just that. I think Belichick saw what one of his disciples in Patrick Graham did with a really cool Giants defense in 2020, using guys like Jabril Peppers as a box safety, moving hybrid safeties down as slot corners where they could then rotate into a 2-shell, rotate up into cover 4, of course, play man coverage, blitz, getting very complicated with their safety rotations. Belichick has, I think, taken those two base concepts and melded it into a really fun defense to watch that gets me excited here. And when you look at even beyond that, like the personnel usage, it's so special. And I'm so excited to get into this defense because as you go through player by player and you understand kind of how they fit in each individual role, it's really, really just kind of, easy to geek out as a football nerd to just see like, wow, he really does use each individual player to the best of their ability. And I think this year is going to be kind of the climax of that, because like they've had guys kind of in and out of the lineup. They've had young players developing. This year, they're kind of bringing everybody back. They added a couple new fun pieces. It's going to be so fun to see Belichick scheme this defense up, man, with Gerard Mayo and Steve Belichick doing a good job behind Bill as well. As far as the offensive coaching is concerned, I'm pretty optimistic that Bill's going to do at least a good job here. I always respected his offensive prowess for the Texans. They always had some of the best offense in the league, and just maybe we're seeing that he sheltered some of Deshaun Watson's deficiencies as well, because, man, he was ugly stepping back into a different offense in Cleveland. But I'm not going to give him full credit for that. Deshaun's got a lot of talent and did a lot of heavy lifting for Houston as well. But, it's just a good modern pro spread scheme. He has some of the college background, coaching at Penn State for a few years. He was a part of those Josh McDaniels early offenses that were really starting to, get innovative with quick game and option routes. And from a run game perspective, I think they're going to be very balanced as well. So I just think it's such a sound hire. It just makes sense. He spent a couple years at Alabama where they've had a lot of success offensively, and I think he's ready to fall back in place as a really good offensive coordinator in the NFL. Maybe not an elite mind, maybe not the most innovative guy in the world, but certainly a massive, massive upgrade from what they had in Matt Patricia last year, and at least good on Belichick for self-correcting and getting a good option like this. So they're going to be in tier 3 for me for both pass game and run game coaching, which is, just kind of in the middle as a good, well-run offensive staff. And across the board, this is, of course, a coaching staff and a culture that is going to lead to a big chunk of the reason why the Patriots came in 16th in my power rankings. But this roster has some hidden gems on it as well. Training camps are here and football season is just around the corner, but at Underdog Fantasy, you don't have to wait until late August or early September to draft your favorite players and compete for huge cash payouts. In fact, Underdog's Best Ball Mania 4 is the biggest fantasy football competition of all time with, wait for it, $15 million in cash winnings. Best Ball is draft, set it, and forget it. No waivers, no trades. Underdog will retroactively give you your best lineup every week, which means no sitting there on Mondays, making your friends act like they care about which players you left on the bench that week. I've loved filling out my Best Ball teams this summer, and I know you will too. And right now, if you sign up using promo code TFG at Underdog Fantasy, not only will you support this channel in a big, big way, but they will match up to $100 on your first deposit. That's 4 free entries into the Best Ball Mania competition or a season's long worth of entries into daily pick'em contests, which are the best way to enjoy NFL games even more with a shot of winning up to 20 times your entry. So that is a match of up to $100 on your first deposit when you sign up right now at Underdog Fantasy. And now it's time to dive into the roster, where we are going to start by taking a look at this passing game, specifically starting with the quarterback room, where the New England Patriots rank 23rd for me heading into next season. And I am optimistic that Mac Jones can get back to playing good football. Last year was a complete unmitigated disaster. The play calling, everything from receivers running into each other to poor run-pass balance, predictable screen calls, you name it. It was just about as bad as it possibly could have been when we all saw that Matt Patricia was going to be calling plays here. And Mac gets a lot of negative press because he was feuding with this coaching staff, screaming at him on the sideline, and even to the point where it sounds like he went outside of the locker room to get better coaching. And, they obviously didn't like that internally, and it's built up some bad blood. But at the end of the day, Mac Jones was right. They did him dirty. They did not give him the right situation around him to succeed. knowing that Mac Jones is not some super weapon of a quarterback, knowing that he doesn't have these insane tools to extend plays and bail the offense out of trouble. At his best, he's going to be one of these Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott types of quarterbacks where, he does need the right structure around him, but you give him that, and any given year, he can play like a top 10 quarterback. I think in his rookie year, Mac Jones showed a ton of promise that he can be that guy. Now, he wasn't completely free of blame last year, and he did get injured at a point in the season, which set him back, but he did start to press a lot and force some balls that shouldn't have been forced. The turnover-worthy plays went way up. Inversely, his big-time throws went way up as well. He had some freaking dimes, and I've always said this about Mac Jones, that he even beyond like what Kirk Cousins or Derek Carr, some of these quarterbacks don't have, Mac Jones does actually have at least good pocket presence. He does feel the rush. He's not fazed by pressure. He can navigate the pressure and extend plays within and outside the pocket better than a lot of quarterbacks that we view at his level do. And if he can get things back on track, I still think Mac Jones can be a good quarterback. But you do hope that some of the over-aggression that we saw last year doesn't turn into bad tendencies, right? So that'll be something to keep an eye on. You also just need him to kind of get back on track mentally and culturally within this locker room. I do think there's some tension between Belichick and Mac Jones, and that's why I like bringing in Bill O'Brien, a new face to just kind of, clear the air, get things back on track, and there's no reason Mac Jones can't be a good quarterback for a really good playoff caliber Patriots team this year. So again, 23rd at quarterback, and they're just hoping, just as they were hoping when they drafted Mac Jones, that with him under a rookie contract, that he can give them solid to good quarterback play and not make or break this team's season. But obviously, whether or not he can get back to that level, which he showed in his rookie year, as opposed to what he showed last year, is going to be a big wild card, a big question mark, a big X factor for this team's season. They do have Bailey Zappi, a fourth-round rookie who stepped in and played really well last year, to the point where some people were wondering if he should overtake Mac Jones. I just think that's insulting to Mac Jones. Zappi looked good, played well, but he's got even more physical limitations than Mac has. I think he's got a long way to go before he can prove that he's anything more than maybe like Gardner Minshew, who I like Gardner Minshew, but, he's got his limits. But good backup nonetheless. And then they bring in Trace McSorley, who was truly unwatchable for the Cardinals last year. I would be surprised if he's anything other than that third quarterback under the new rule. Then you look at the weaponry here. They rank 26th in the NFL. Such a bland group. It's honestly one of the deeper group of weapons in the league. They have like 7 guys here that are essentially starters. 4 wide receivers in Devontae Parker, Juju Smith-Schuster, year 2 deep threat Tyquan Thornton, and Kendrick Bourne. They have 2 tight ends, Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki. They've got the running backs. Like, they're all good pieces, but there is just really no dynamism here at all unless Tyquan Thornton can establish some semblance of consistency here. So while on paper it's a bunch of good players, that lack of sort of complementary skill sets that add to overall dynamism does drop them down a little bit. And honestly, I think this group is where the Patriots leave the most to be desired outside of maybe upside at quarterback. And the two combine, of course, for this very bland, almost pessimistic outlook that most people have on the Patriots offense. And I can't fully fault that, though I do think things will be better this year. So let's go through the players here, starting with the wide receivers. Devontae Parker gets brought back here, just gave him a contract extension through the next couple of years, and really good wide receiver, right? If you put Devontae Parker maybe with the Buffalo Bills or the Minnesota Vikings or wherever where there's a true alpha or a dominant deep threat plus a great slot receiver, like you put him on the Lions maybe, he can be kind of that third piece that completes a wide receiver group. But here he's kind of their best wide receiver. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but there is just some of that lack of dynamism. He's not a great player after the catch. He can be a vertical threat, but it's in contested catch situations where, it's just not a guarantee that he's going to come down with it when he's got a cornerback draped all over him. He doesn't have that speed to really separate down the field. Decent route runner in the short to intermediate. All around a good player, but, there's just not a ton of excitement for him here, and that's understandable. Juju Smith-Schuster gets brought in here, which I did think was an interesting signing. Like, I'd rather they bring in Juju here than had brought back Jakobi Meyers, because I do think Meyers' skill set is super redundant with Kendrick Bourne. And honestly, when you look at the way Juju has succeeded from the slot a lot of his career as that kind of bigger bodied physical presence, as Meyers has been for this team, he's really been good there. So he's going to move around. I think mostly they see him as an upgrade to what Jakobi Meyers did for them, but it does bring some added flexibility as well, because unlike Jakobi Meyers, you can slide Juju out to the outside where he's a little bit better working the sideline. Again, like Devontae Parker, not like a vertical field stretcher at all. There's just not a lot of speed there with Juju Smith-Schuster. It's why he's at his best working the short to intermediate parts of the field. He is excellent when the play breaks down, just as Jakobi Meyers was as a former wide receiver there with Meyers. Mack and Meyers always had a nice chemistry there. Kind of when Mack starts to extend plays, I mentioned earlier, he's pretty consistent in terms of, at least getting some play extension out of bad pass protection. And Juju's going to be there in those scenarios as well, running those short to intermediate routes and working back to Mac Jones. So he's going to be a good fit, not some signing of the year or anything, but I do think if the money was going to be the same on Meyers as it is on Juju, I would much rather have Juju Smith-Schuster. And then you have Tyquan Thornton, who I do think will outsnap Kendrick Bourne, although it's going to be very, very close to a 50-50 split. But I think with Thornton, who was a second-round pick last year, is a really talented deep threat, physically talented deep threat, a guy that showed last year against NFL talent, he can get open deep, which is something a lot of these receivers just can't do. They just don't have the speed to do it. And Mac Jones, when it's there, he showed at Alabama, and he's shown here at New England, even if he doesn't have a rocket arm, he can let it go and throw the deep ball with good accuracy, and they'd be really smart to at least take the top off the defense, make them check a couple times a game, and make sure that they're not letting Tyquan Thornton sneak through for, a 50, 60-yard touchdown, which he's capable of. He's got to clean up the hands and better track the deep ball and just establish more consistency. A lot of people screamed overdraft when they took Tyquan Thornton. I didn't. I had a second-round grade on Thornton. I did like the talent. I thought he was one of the most underrated players in last year's draft class, and it was fun to see him go in the second round. But they just haven't been able to, at least in his first year, with freaking, Matt Patricia calling plays, utilize that speed. So I do think the arrow's pointing up, but it does come down to his hands and really, tracking the deep ball. He didn't have a ton of drops at Baylor, but he doesn't have some massive catch radius either. So he does need to adjust his body and have that body control and ball tracking show up better in year 2. But he's a huge X factor for this team, because if they get through 5 weeks and he can't be trusted out there, all of a sudden Kendrick Bourne becomes a full-time starter, probably mostly from the slot, and you're kicking Juju out to the outside. And those are 3 capable receivers, but none of which scare you at all after they've run about 10 yards down the field. So Thornton establishing some level of consistency is paramount for this offense to open up. And that's just going to be very wait and see. And I know a lot of people are pessimistic that that's going to happen. And honestly, I kind of understand that, just because it's been such a wasteland for the passing game in New England. So I do get it. It's going to be very wait and see on Thornton, and those other 3 receivers, we know what they are. We mentioned earlier they have 2 tight ends that are good players. Hunter Henry has added another 5 pounds of weight, going to be an even better blocker, playing at 260 pounds. He, to me, after all those injuries in LA, just never really got back to being a dynamic difference maker in the passing game. He's really kind of settled in as a quality starting Y tight end where he can, move the sticks, run a stick route, run a slant, come down with a tough catch, in the 6 to 12 yard area, a red zone threat, classic inline Y tight end. But if you're not going to provide any explosiveness, you might as well get up to 260 and be a better run blocker. So I get that. And then they bring in Mike Gesicki, who I think is going to be what they thought Jonnu Smith could be for them. And even when they signed Jonnu, I said this at the time, like they had thought they wanted to be more of a wide zone offense, and Jonnu made sense for that. But the rest of their team didn't, right? Like they didn't have athletes on the O-line. They didn't have speed at running back. Like it just didn't make sense for them to run more wide zone. And Jonnu very much needs to be in one of those Shanahan-style offenses, hence why Atlanta acquired him. Mike Gesicki is much more of a either spread or pro-style flex tight end where he's just going to play slot wide receiver. He can actually run routes. He can stretch the seam. He can be a really good kind of vertical threat as a tight end. I think Mac's going to really like Mike Gesicki. He's going to add some bit of a mismatch problem that this team hasn't had. So he is a very solid upgrade. But, he is one of these guys where you put him in line to try and block, and he's going to hold you back. That's why Miami so willingly let him go. But I think with Hunter Henry here and with the scheme in place, they're going to find good ways to get this going. And by the way, the Gronk, Aaron Hernandez prime was Bill O'Brien calling plays for New England. So I think that's worth noting as well. So I do like that signing quite a bit, adding at least some bit of dynamism to this passing game that unless Tyquan Thornton can figure things out, it just doesn't exist with this group. That applies to their starting receiving back as well with Ramondre Stevenson, who is, I would just describe as Kareem Hunt-esque in the receiving game where he'll catch the ball, he'll break tackles consistently, he's a really good screen threat, but not a route runner or a mismatch problem when you want to, ask him to, work linebackers out of the backfield or line up in the slot. Very much a dump down option in that way, and that's fine, but again, that lack of dynamism just keeps circling back here. That's where you do hope that maybe Pierre Strong, with more opportunities, can provide some of that. I freaking loved Pierre Strong. I think he was either RB3 or RB4 for me last year. Had a second or third round grade on him. They get him, I think, round 4, and was just buried right away, right? They had, obviously, Stevenson here. They had Damian Harris was here. It was just going to be really tough for him to get opportunities. But towards the back third of last season, the door for opportunity opened for him, and he got out there 3 straight weeks of at least 2 catches and, made a couple guys miss and showed some stuff. He's the guy with the juice in this backfield, and if he can establish himself within this role, if he can improve his pass protection enough to get out there consistently, he's a guy to definitely keep an eye on to, be a more explosive version of like James White, which this team has shown, within the offense that they want to run. They want that receiving back to be a part of the offense, and I would definitely keep an eye on Pierre Strong. That is a reason why they have Ty Montgomery in here as well. He's getting some buzz in camp, which might be, pumping the brakes on Pierre Strong a little bit, but, Montgomery, a converted running back himself, talented player, could sneakily have a role in this offense if Pierre Strong doesn't impress in the next 4 or 5 weeks. But that's really all of the relevant skill players here in this passing game. They do spend a couple of 6th round picks on Demario Douglas and Keyshawn Boutte. So Douglas does provide a lot of juice. He, to me, went a little bit later than he should have gone. I had him as an early day 3 type of prospect for sure. And for better or worse, I actually had almost an identical grade on Demario Douglas as I did on Wan'Dale Robinson coming out of Kentucky as like a 4th, 5th round guy. And, Wan'Dale with Brian Dable stepped in as a 2nd round pick and made me look foolish for that grade. So, just for what it's worth, I saw a similar skill set. And we'll see kind of if he gets sprinkled in as kind of a gadget player here. He's wide receiver 5 at best to start. But if you want to run jet sweeps and bubble screens and stuff, he's the guy with a lot of the juice here, and we might see him. Keyshawn Boutte, on the other hand, was much more of a dart throw at upside, a highly recruited guy that feuded with the coaching staff, had a putrid combine for a guy that was a 5-star recruit that was supposed to kind of step into Indianapolis and answer a lot of questions about his work ethic. And, you see the guy with a 28.5-inch vertical jump. It's just like, now you're starting to question, is he even all that explosive? His final year at LSU was a complete disaster. The tape's good, though. The tape shows athleticism. It shows ball skills. It shows that almost kind of like what Stephon Diggs was coming out of Maryland, who went in the 6th round as well, where it's like, well, the flashes are there, but there's just not an element of consistency. I'm not saying he's going to be Stephon Diggs, but that's kind of the dart throw that they're making there, and we'll wait and see. And then Matthew Slater will probably take the 7th wide receiver spot again as a special teamer. The one thing that is worth noting as well with Demario Douglas maybe not getting involved in those gadget plays is they did that with Marcus Jones last year, their slot cornerback. And woo, that dude is electric with the ball in his hands. One of my kind of sneaky better draft takes last year was saying they might even get this guy involved on the offense, and then they did it after he was drafted as a corner. And someone that could even get involved on offense. So, they'll probably just keep doing that with Marcus Jones until Demario Douglas establishes himself a little bit more. But it is worth noting that that Marcus Jones provides a little bit of juice in the gadget game. Let's see, who else haven't we talked about here? Anthony Ferkser, tight end depth, along with some other names, but I think we got this room pretty well covered. The 26th ranked group of weapons in the league, a group that is going to be okay. A lot of names. They're going to be very injury proof, but do they have big playmakers here? No, they really don't. Not unless Tyquan Thornton can really surprise in year 2, which I would say is not even 50-50 on if that can happen. And then you get to the running back room. Really nice group. They rank 17th in a league that is stacked with great running back rooms. So you got Ramondre Stevenson, 1,000-yard rusher last year. He's got this backfield to himself now, and he's, I think, going to eat this year. He's going to get probably 250 carries as long as he can stay healthy, and he's a bruiser, man. He breaks a lot of tackles. I think his vision is solid. Does need to clean up the fumbles, though. He lost 4 fumbles last year. That's not something Bill Belichick has a long leash for. So as long as he can clean that up, you are talking about a star running back, someone that is in the fringe top 10. On film, the difference between Ramondre Stevenson and Najee Harris, Harris has been doing a little bit longer, but not that much longer. They're very similar players, and I think they can get similar production here from Ramondre again this year. And then you got Pierre Strong, who I talked a little bit about already as a receiving back, someone I really liked coming out. Now we get to talk about his running style, which is just electric. I mean, his college highlights at South Dakota State are some of the most fun running back highlights in the last few years. He moves like LaShawn McCoy did with the jump cut and, just that fluid ability to make guys miss with ease, heading into the second level or throwing him a toss to make a defensive back miss. He's got a rare combination of light, quick feet and instincts to do that. So if you can funnel that one trait into consistent vision and toughness and consistency with his carrying, I could be wrong, but I think he also coughed the ball up quite a bit in college. Just going to double check that. Yeah, 4 fumbles in his last year at South Dakota State. Not horrible, but not ideal. Anyway, I don't think he's going to overtake Ramondre Stevenson for as long as he's here. But as a lightning to Ramondre Stevenson's thunder, absolutely. And I think you could get some big games from Pierre Strong. So if you're looking at underdog fantasy, late round options, there's going to be weeks, I think, where they're riding the hot hand and maybe on certain matchups, the outside run game is working better. And you might see big Pierre Strong weeks. And I don't think we need to go crazy about what his upside is any further than that. But I do love this complement of skill sets. Even if they rank 17th, again, there's just so many great running backs rooms in the league. Case in point, the running back market. There's a bunch of really good veteran free agents just sitting there. But yeah, this group is going to help them run the football quite a bit this year. I've also got my eyes on Kevin Harris. If Stevenson ended up getting hurt or got put in the doghouse because of fumbles, I think Kevin Harris can play. He was kind of a luxury why not pick for the Patriots at the end of the draft. They probably had a third or a fourth round grade on him, if not higher, and they were like, yeah, let's just put him in the room and, we'll wait and see if he gets an opportunity ever. Very similar running style to guys like Ramondre Stevenson, to a guy like Damian Harris. They've got a type, and Kevin Harris fits it. So if the opportunity comes, I think he would surprise some people. We mentioned Ty Montgomery maybe getting involved in the receiving game if Pierre Strong doesn't overtake that role. And then they also have the skinny, undersized J.J. Taylor still competing for a roster spot here. Love this running back room. Don't love the quarterback run multiplier. They are tied with 3 other teams for 0% benefit gotten from the quarterback. Not a big surprise. You're not running a whole lot of read options or even play action boots with Mac Jones. That's just not his skill set. So the Patriots are not getting that sort of math game multiplier that a lot of teams do with the QB run game. But let's talk about the offensive line, and this is a really solid group. They do have some question marks, and honestly, all 5 guys you can raise questions about, whether it's health or play on the field. So left tackle Trent Brown was able to get through all of last season healthy, which is not the norm for him. You hope that is the norm moving forward because he's just a rock solid left tackle. He's I would say the best anchoring left tackle in the league, like the hardest left tackle to bull rush. It's him and Orlando Brown. I think Trent Brown's even better with his feet and anchoring than Orlando Brown, though it's close. But he will lose occasionally against speed and bend around the edge. Now, they'll do a decent enough job chip blocking against speed rushers, and he has good enough technique in his feet that he's not always getting ran around the corner, but it does happen. That's why he's not an elite pass protector, but overall, he's a stud in the pass protection. But as a run blocker, he is slower off the ball. He is massive, and it's just difficult for him to consistently get leverage in the run game. If he gets his hands on you, you're not going to shed off of him. And he can create a little bit of drive, although not a ton because he's not super fast off the ball. Definitely better in the pass game than he is in the run game, but overall a really good left tackle that you just hope can stay healthy. Then you get Cole Strange at left guard, first-round rookie last year. Another pick that a lot of people hated, and even if he was a little bit high for my liking, I did think he was the best guard available when they took him, and he stepped in and played pretty well as a rookie guard. Took his lumps as any rookie guard, especially one coming out of Chattanooga, would be expected to have. He had some ugly losses in pass protection. I think he's still trying to get the timing of everything down in the run game, but overall, you're talking about a great athlete that put on another 5 pounds in the weight room this offseason. Excellent mentality in the run game, and I think the arrow is pointing up. I don't know that he's ever going to be, Joe Tooney, but can he be a really quality guard here for a long time? Yeah, I do, and it's just a matter of consistency and how much can that arrow be pointing up, but a solid left guard nonetheless. Then at center, David Andrews. I would just raise minor injury concerns with him. Missed the whole 2019 season, has missed a decent chunk of games, both 2020 and 2022. 2021, though, he had one of his best career years and played the whole year. So you're hoping he can stay healthy. When he's out there, he's a top 5 to 10 center in the league, especially as a run blocker, where he's got just a really good ability to get leverage, grips for hands, and good off the ball. This is a team that traditionally likes to run a lot of gap runs, and to have a guy that can get a hold of a nose tackle and turn him away from that B gap, that's a huge asset for this team. Pretty good in pass protection, takes his lumps, but not something you're really worried about. It really is just, can he stay healthy for a full season? And you'd put maybe a tiny little question mark on that, but overall, you love having David Andrews in there. At right guard, Michael Onwenu expected to, at some point in the next year, to get a massive contract, whether that's with the Patriots or with someone else. I would imagine it's something like what Elton Jenkins just got for the Green Bay Packers, though he is a different, more acquired taste of a lineman. He's not the athlete that a guy like Elton Jenkins is, but God, he just has such a complete game at the end of the day. I mean, yeah, he's not the lightest guy on his feet. He plays at like 350 pounds, and wide zone heavy teams might be a little bit more turned off by a guy like Nwenu. But if you want to run gap and you want to drive someone down away from your gap, or you want him to pull and delete a linebacker, like, he can do those things at a very high level. He's a complete brick shithouse in pass protection, similar to what we said about Trent Brown. And Nwenu might be the best, not the best, but one of the best anchoring pass protecting guards in the league as well. He can even step out, and he's had some good starts at tackle. So he's a really nice player. He's currently on the PUP, but I don't think they're too worried about it, and hopefully he can get back 100%. And hopefully for the Patriots, they give him a contract extension. He's earned it, in my opinion. And then you got Riley Reif at right tackle, the Band-Aid man himself. I mean, it couldn't be a better term for him because, for one, he's missed some time for injury over the last 4 or 5 years, but he's been the perfect Band-Aid for a bunch of different offensive lines. And I think the Patriots are going to get exactly that. He's been pretty consistently like the 26th best right tackle in the NFL for like 8 years. Ever since he signed with Minnesota in 2017, all the way through Cincinnati in 2021, and played pretty well for Chicago last year when healthy. So I'm totally fine with this signing. Not someone they're going to have to be too worried about as long as he can stay healthy. Though definitely someone you're going to want to give some chip help if he's going against Myles Garrett or, a really good power rusher. That's really where you feel him is a lack of play strength is in both the pass game and the run game. But really a technically sound, tough guy that's going to be just fine for them. You put all those pieces together and you get a slightly better pass protecting line than a run blocking line. They rank 12th in pass protection, 21st in run blocking, and that computes for 14th overall as an offensive line. It's an above average group that's going to help them do what they want to do. As far as the depth is concerned, we mentioned James Ferentz, coach's son type, really smart backup center who just has a complete lack of physical tools that definitely shows up in his ability to help in the run game. He just can't really get off the ball and contribute in that part of blocking. But as a pass protector, he picks up stunts. He's got good technique. He can survive a couple weeks if you need him. You do have a pair of solid backup tackles. Nothing special, but two guys that had career years last year, both Calvin Anderson and Connor McDermott. Anderson for Denver played okay at left tackle for Denver in a lot of starts, though he was one of those guys that when he lost ugly because he would lose his feet from underneath him and could get overwhelmed by power at times. So you want him as a backup, but if anything happens to Reif or Brown, which you can pretty much guarantee you're going to miss some games between those two players, Anderson can step in and not be a complete turnstile. So I like that signing, along with bringing or keeping Connor McDermott around, who, when they did lose Isaiah Wynn, McDermott stepped in and played pretty well for a backup tackle, someone that they picked up off the Jets practice squad. You can certainly do a lot worse in terms of tackle depth, but if you lose Reif or Brown for an extended period of time, you're going to start to feel that over time. Everybody else is going to be lumped into the developmental sort of pool. You have Andrew Stwaber at tackle, was a 7th-round pick last year. They spend 4 mid-round draft picks on guys this year. Sidney So, Jake Andrews, and Antonio Mafi, all interior players. I really like the combination of So and Mafi as upside picks. Sidney So especially, really thought he was a value at the point where they got him. Complete dickhead of a blocker, really good athlete. Arrow is pointing up for him, and if Mike Nwenu can't go because he can't get off the pup in time, I'd be interested to see what So can do. I'd be worried about him in pass protection, but his run block tape was really good. I know Brandon Thorne really liked him as well, so that's always an extra feather in a guy's cap. And then Antonio Mafi as well, even better in the run game. I mean, his athleticism paired with his raw play strength alone is going to make him an adequate run blocker. Reminds me a little bit of like Netani Muti coming out a couple years, although Muti was a little bit better of a player, but just had massive health questions. Mafi, likewise, like like I said, he's going to be able to run block at the next level. It's just his pass protection was hard to watch. Like, his feet need to be completely reworked from the ground up, literally. So you don't want him playing this year. But in terms of potential there between So and Mafi, like, if they like what they see from these guys internally, that might allude to letting Mike Onwenu walk, which the Patriots aren't afraid to let guys walk in free agency, as we know. So it's something to keep an eye on. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I think the more likely scenario is they extend Onwenu because he's worth it. But a couple of nice draft picks that I would bet on one of these two guys working out, given how well they've developed, especially interior offensive linemen. And then Chasen Hines, another athletic kind of project type. Now, I said all these guys were project types, but Jake Andrews doesn't necessarily fit that mold. For me, he was just a backup center pick, a guy that, as Ferentz continues to get older, they know David Andrews has injury questions where he might miss a few games. Jake Andrews started a million games at Troy. He's scrappy, technically sound, is going to be good at calling blitz protections and all that, even for a rookie, but just a undersized, complete lack of upside type. Sometimes those guys surprise and really put it in the weight room. But, fourth round pick for a guy like that was a little bit rich, but I see at least what they liked in him. And then he got some decent skill blockers as well. Hunter Henry is going to get after it in the run game. I wouldn't be surprised if he has a career year as a run blocker just because he's putting on another 5 pounds or so. Gesicki, not so much if they want to run 12 personnel, but more often than not, he's going to be flexed out as a slot receiver, where you'd like to think he can have some success out there on corners and stuff, as opposed to inline. And then all your receivers are pretty solid as well. So they're going to get some good impacts from the skill blockers. Again, they rank 21st in run blocking, 12th in pass blocking, 14th in overall offensive line. It's a really good group, and that's going to round out the offense. So, a lot of balance, a lot of depth, and honestly, not a ton of major question marks. It's really just a lack of overall dynamism and explosiveness that puts them at 22nd in overall offense, 21st in the run game, a little bit worse in the pass game, 24th. Let's cut to the chase. They're going to need this defense to be elite if this is going to be a playoff team in a crazy deep AFC. So let's talk about this unit, and I can't wait. This is a really fun group, starting with the defensive line. And I mentioned it at the top of the show, but Bill's ability to make sure these guys are playing in the right spots as far as what technique they're playing, whether that's playing a nose tackle or, screaming off the edge as a wide 9 or playing a 4-eye. He will put each of these players in the right spot. And more importantly, he'll put them in those spots at the exact right time. He's not going to put Dietrich Wise out there as a 3-tech if they're going to be getting the run on early downs. He's not going to put Christian Barmore out there against the run on early downs. He's not going to put Josh Uche out there where he can get hurt against the run. Likewise, he's not going to have Lawrence Guy and Anthony Jennings out there when they need to get after the quarterback. So, this to me is the most uniquely crafted and best utilized rotation of D linemen in the league. So let's work outside in with all these guys. You got to start with Matt Judon, who's just been such a perfect fit since they signed him. He can rush with power. He's got some bend. He's got a variety of different swipes and rip moves that he can use to get after the quarterback. He's a big-bodied guy that will defend the run. He's super instinctive to drop into coverage. He's everything Bill Belichick has ever wanted in an edge player and ever needs, because he can do a little bit of everything at a well above average level. And he's definitely the focal point here. Really productive guy earlier in the year, to the point where he was putting up defensive player of the year numbers. Tapered off as the year went on because he's just not that efficient of a one-on-one pass rush win rate kind of guy. It's just difficult for him to sustain, what was on track to being a 24 sack season. It's just not his. He's not TJ Watt. He's not Nick Bosa, right? But he is a damn good player in his own right. And then you got a couple other really nice pieces off the edge. Both were drafted together, and both guys, I raved about these picks when they happened, and it took really until the second half of last year to really see the returns on both Anthony Jennings and Josh Uche. Uche, of course, is going to get the notoriety and the payday and the respect because he does it as a rusher, whereas Jennings does it as a run defender. But like I said, you've got a coach that's going to put these guys out there in the right spots at the right time. And Jennings, just as he was at Alabama, is a brick shit house of an outside backer. He can set a hard edge, doesn't get driven off the ball, can stack and shed, and is perfect in that role. And then anytime, you get him into 2nd and 8 or, 3rd and 9 or whatever, if you expect the pass, you put Uche out there. And it took them a while to trust Uche and to really put him in a position to succeed. Only 179 snaps his rookie year, 241 last year, and only 373 last year, but wasn't someone they leaned into earlier on in the season, then missed a couple games due to injury, but from week 8 on, saw 29 snaps a game, which is much more of that starting rotational edge. And in that time, he was legit one of the best pass rushers in the entire NFL landscape. He had 46 pressures and 12 sacks in a half a season on like 290 pass rush snaps or whatever it is. Like, he was insane. The speed, the bend, the athleticism, even a little bit of ability to convert speed to power, the instincts to, get inside on a quick swipe move. He was unblockable in the second half of last season, and I would be floored if he's not getting at least 29 snaps a game like he did in the second half of last year. And his emergence and really being established now heading into next season, whereas, again, he was a non-factor for the first half of last season when this defense just wasn't as good. Him being in this picture now heading into the year in a contract season, extreme thumbs up, arrows pointing up moment for this defensive line as a whole. And then you start to work your way inside the D-line a little bit more to that kind of hybrid end that they have here. And that's Dietrich Wise, and I think what they see in Keon White, where they spent a second-round pick. But I think Dietrich Wise is going to be the full-go starter in that role, with Keon White probably as the long-term replacement there. And White will definitely get some snaps so they can see what they have there. But I'm not expecting a huge year from Keon White this season, because Dietrich Wise had a career year last year, and I expect him to play really well, if not even better this year. But Bill has always liked to be a step ahead and let guys go a year early rather than a year late. Wise, 29 years old. So he looks at Keon White and says, that's my Dietrich Wise replacement. As far as White goes, I'm not expecting big things from him this year. I thought he was remarkably raw as a player. Didn't really think he had a lot of instincts as a pass rusher. And honestly, as a run defender, I was annoyed by how often he just let guys run right past his gap, especially as a 5-tech. So I think he needs a high amount of coaching. And I certainly thought any first-round conversation on Keon White was a joke. And I even thought where he went in the second round was a little bit early for where I would have taken him. But with those tools in this scheme fit, with this perfect kind of development path, I totally get it. I love the landing spot, and I think he can be everything Dietrich Wise has been. And Wise hasn't always been this dominant 4-eye hybrid end like he was last year either, right? So it'll be wait and see on Keon White, but I haven't seen crazy expectations for White or anything in year one. But if they do exist, I would push back on that basically. But with Dietrich Wise, he had a career year last year, as I mentioned. I think his production kind of went overshadowed by Judon and the emergence of Uche last year, but that's a good problem to have for the Patriots. Lining up anywhere from a 5-tech to a 3-tech, oftentimes as a 4-eye, he had 56 pressures and 8 sacks last year. Now, that's like double the amount of pressures he typically gets every year for the last 4 years. I don't know that he'll necessarily repeat that huge number. But if you get even somewhere in between as your third or fourth best rusher, that's awesome. And he also is utilized well in the run game. He's not the most amazing run defender ever, but when they get him in there as a 5-tech in some of their different fronts, He's a 280-pound body that's really difficult for tackles to move and can set a hard edge and get off blocks and make plays in the backfield where he had 26 defensive stops last year. So really like Dedrick Wise. He's the perfect skill set as that starter on this front. And then that's all great. That's a pretty damn good pass rush right there. But hold on, because another thing I don't think a lot of people realize with this Patriots team and why maybe the biggest reason they come in higher for me is Christian Barmore is back. You know, he missed the middle half of last season for injury and started the year okay, but not on fire necessarily. But he comes back the final 4 weeks of last season and gets back to showing the promise of a potential like top 10 pass rushing interior piece in the league. A guy that when the Patriots got him, myself and many were like, how did we just let Bill Belichick get Christian Barmore in the second round? And, you know, last year was, I would say, a slight setback, but his on-field production was still great. Last 2 games of the year, he had 11 pressures and a sack. Like, his athleticism, his explosiveness off the ball, his ability to redirect as a rusher and penetrate, it's up there. Let's just leave it at that. So to get him back, to get Josh Uche fully into the mix next year, this pass rush is going to be a hell of a lot better than a lot of people realize. I think Patriots fans are well aware of that, but this very well could be the best pass rush Bill Belichick's ever had. Is that crazy? You know, I'd have to go way back to those, 2000s teams, but we're not used to Patriots fronts being this nasty, and that's kind of a scary thought. And then we haven't even mentioned Devon Godchaux yet, who he's kind of the unsung hero of this front, if not Dedrick Wise, because Godchaux is going to open things up for everybody else. Pretty much all they're going to ask him, especially on first or second down, is just play the nose, eat a double team, anchor down, don't get pushed back. If a running back enters your proximity, try to get your bear claws on him. And he's extremely stout and does that at a high level. But, in a league where, a lot of people are going to look at that PFF grading profile. He had a 53 run defense grade last year. Well, you got to realize the context behind that. With what they ask him to do, there are just not really any opportunities for positively graded plays for the most part. And that's how you get that grade over 60. And then, of course, he's going to have some losses against double teams, playing that many. And that's how you can go below 60, is when you do lose a yard or two against double teams. So I think Devon Godchaux is a really good nose tackle. They, I believe, just extended him again because they know he's so essential to what they want to do, even if he is not going to get really any praise for what he does for this group. And a big part of that is he's pretty useless as a pass rusher. He's a very stout guy and just doesn't have that lateral quickness. So, it just doesn't result in much pass rush production. He's not entirely useless, but definitely someone in an ideal world, they're getting off the field and putting Barmore in next to Dedrick Wise for their pass rush package. So that's already 7 deep of guys covered, 6 of which are guys I would consider starters. And then another guy that's going to be a big part of this rotation yet again is Lawrence Guy. Now, he's winding down. I think they're going to have an uptick in Barmore snaps and a downtick in Guy's snaps this year. But they're still going to use Lawrence Guy on run defense downs instead of Christian Barmore, because that is the thing with Barmore is he really doesn't play with a lot of discipline. He doesn't play with good pad level, and he gets moved around against the run pretty consistently. Occasionally he'll splash, and he does have strong arms to shed blocks, Barmore does, but he's not doing what Lawrence Guy does as far as the dirty work of, setting his gap, stack, shed, with discipline, and they kept Lawrence Guy around for a reason. So he'll still be a part of this rotation. Similar to Godchaux, though, they don't want him on the field for pass rush downs. Once upon a time, he had enough athleticism to get after the quarterback, but not so much anymore. Still a very useful player to have around. And then beyond that, you're just looking at real rotation depth. Daniel Ekwale, who is kind of a lighter rocket launcher of a defensive tackle. Decent athlete, decent penetrator, good depth to have, but not established as any consistent starter or anything. Carl Davis as a backup nose tackle, someone that they will put in there on have-to-have-it run defense downs with him and Godshaw kind of eating in the middle. He's a useful role player for that. He's carved out a decent career, still kicking it. Got to be up there towards 30 years old now. And then just a couple developmental pieces, Sam Roberts, Ronnie Perkins to round out the group. If you couldn't tell, I love this defensive line. Going to be one of the more fun groups to watch for film junkies and true, diehard football fans, which I know if you're watching this series, you are. The way they're going to move these guys around, the different skill sets, how these different guys win, it's a ton of fun. Ultimately, they rank 10th for pass rush, which honestly, they could be top 5 if Barmore and Uche play like they did in the last month of last season, but those two guys still have a decent amount to prove. And then D-line run defense, they rank 22nd. It's a solid group for run defense. I'm not really worried about it, but there's nobody that's like insane against the run here. But that takes us to the linebackers, and this linebacker conversation doesn't look like any other group in the league. In fact, it's almost counterintuitive to my grading system because the way they use these guys, they don't look at the linebacker position in the same way that every other team in the league does, where it's like, okay, we're a 4-2 front and we got our 2 starting linebackers that are going to be 3 down guys. Like, that's pretty much every scheme in the league right now. That's not the Patriots. The Patriots are like, we got 5 different guys that can play linebacker at any given moment, depending on what the down and distance is. And we're only going to ask these guys to do stuff that they're good at. And it's not easy. It's a lot of work and attention to detail and really like involved coaching to get away with that. But that's what the Patriots do. And that leaves them with one of the best, most diverse linebacker production in the league. Even if on paper you look at their linebackers, Juwan Bentley and Jelani Tavai, and you're like, that's not a special group. They rank 6th for me in both coverage and linebacker run defense because of the way they use these guys. So let's start with the real linebackers, quote unquote, Juwan Bentley and Jelani Tavai. Both very similar players. Bentley just a little bit more established, but both of these guys are massive, essentially oversized linebackers for the modern game, where they will stack and shed and eat you in between the trenches. They're headhunters. They play with discipline. Both pretty good blitzers as well. And both, likewise, are stiffs in space that if they do get caught having to cover anything beyond 5 to 10 yards depth, they're not going to be able to keep up. And at times, you can get them in, you can come out in 12 personnel, run play action, and get a guy like Juwan Bentley caught on an athletic tight end or a slot wide receiver. If you scheme at them appropriately, you can catch them that way. But that's the chess game that you're going to have to live with going against a Bill Belichick defense, because the next snap, you think you've got that, and then Kyle Duggar's rotating down, locking up that tight end. So, it's a little give and take with this group. But it is that ability for them to so consistently protect these throwback linebackers with these 3 safeties, thanks to their scheme and coaching, that makes this such a special group. I mean, Kyle Duggar played 359 snaps as a linebacker last year. Adrian Phillips 237, and Jabril Peppers 201 snaps as a linebacker. They still ranked as a top run defense in the NFL. So that that they're putting them out there in spots where their lack of size for linebackers isn't getting exploited. So those 3 guys, really Kyle Duggar, Phillips, and Peppers, they're all some of the best coverage linebackers in the NFL because they are big safeties that are just good coverage players with good instincts and athleticism. But one of the more impressive things to me is you look at Bentley and Tavai, and they aren't good coverage linebackers, yet Juwan Bentley was 60th in the NFL in coverage yards allowed. Jelani Tavai was 66th. In PFF coverage grade, Jelani Tavai was 17th, and Jawan Bentley was 19th. So you can sit here and complain about, trying to find a roundabout way to try to get these linebackers to rank really high, but you can't argue with the results, and you can't argue with the coaching efficiency and how amazing of a job Bill Belichick does with this group. And it's a testament to this scheme that has been so perfectly crafted. And then what's crazy is they bring in Marte Mapu, who clearly Bill Belichick has plans for, spending a third-round pick on him. And I don't know how much we'll see from Mapu in year one. He's putting on a bunch of weight. He's put on like 5 to 10 pounds coming out of Sacramento State, kind of making a full conversion to linebacker here. But, man, I can't wait to see what the plan is to maybe even hybridize this and make this even more of an efficient rotation from a guy that does love to play the run, is going to be able to do that better, putting on weight, but is also really athletic and has great coverage instincts. So this could get even better. Maybe not this year. Maybe, though, depending on how much he plays. It really is just a continuation of incredible uses of X's and O's paired with some good Jimmies and Joes to maximize a bunch of players' skill sets. And I love it, man. I absolutely love it. In terms of the rest of the depth here, you got a couple veterans, Mac Wilson and Chris Board, decent backups. Should be able to fill in for the loss of Raekwon McMillan pretty well. Kelvin Munson, Terez Hall, lower level depth chart guys. Shouldn't have to turn to them. But yeah, again, 6th in both linebacker coverage and linebacker run defense. And then you get to the secondary, and another really balanced, versatile group. They rank 14th for me, above average, and better than they did last year. I had them at 16th last year, so even with the loss of Devin McCourty, I have this as a even improved secondary from what they had last year, even though they have some question marks. So let's go through player by player. You got Jonathan Jones as your CB1, had another really good year last year. I think he's just a good starting corner. Probably never going to be a number 1 at this point, but he's incredibly fast. He's good in man-to-man, physical against the run. There's a lot to like with Jonathan Jones. They gave him an extension to stay here, and that was another big move that they made. He was an impending free agent, and they were able to retain him. And that was so smart because Jack Jones ends up getting in trouble, and we don't know if he's going to be available. I think there was probably some fear that Belichick might look at Jonathan Jones and say, yeah, I know we're pretty thin in the secondary, but, I'd rather let him go a year early than a year late. And they didn't do that. They brought him back 2 years, $20 million, good money, good player, love it. And then they spent a first-round pick on Christian Gonzalez. And there were some people questioning if the Patriots would draft a corner in the first round. Definitely was at the top of my positional needs list for them. And not only to take a corner, like I thought maybe Joey Porter Jr. Would be a good fit for them. And certainly still would have been, but to get a guy with the upside of Christian Gonzalez with the 18th pick, I was really surprised he was available. And he's not a perfectly clean prospect. He needs to be coached up a little bit in terms of staying physical throughout the route, the technique and man coverage. Played a lot of zone at Oregon, and that's, I think, something that he'll be pretty comfortable with in New England. But, man, he's a good fit, and they haven't had a cornerback this gifted since Stephon Gilmore. So really no reason he can't be a solid corner, although a rookie that might take his lumps in year one. And you definitely expect he'll be better than what they got in the 10 games from Jalen Mills at corner last year. And I think will at least be more consistent, if not quite as big of a playmaker as what Jack Jones gave them last year. So I think that's an upgrade at CB2, and then a huge upgrade at slot corner where they've been messing around with Miles Bryant because he's a good locker room guy and he's physical and plays the run. But Miles Bryant's pretty consistently been one of the worst cover corners getting significant playing time over the last 2 years. And him taking a seat to Marcus Jones, who in his rookie year was sensational every time he got out there, whether it was at outside corner, slot corner, offense, kick returner. He's a stupid good athlete who's just a football player. I loved this fit when they took him. I saw kind of K'Wan Williams upside with him, not just because of the coverage feel as a potential slot player, but because he's physical and plays with his hair on fire against the run. I think into the slot, he's going to be really good. I think I said coming out that if you could put him in the body of someone like Sauce Gardner, he would have been the number one corner in the draft because his technique is super sound. He's smart in zone coverage. We mentioned the physicality. It's just the fact that he's 5'8", and it's going to be difficult for him to consistently contest balls, even if he's in position. And it might put a little bit of a limiting factor on his ability to be a physical presence from the slot. But overall, I think he's going to be at least a sound starter as a slot corner, if not someone that could break out as one of the better slot corners in the league in year 2. So I love, we've been waiting for upside and explosiveness and excitement for this offense. We mentioned it with the front five, the pass rush. And then you're getting even more of it in the secondary, which they've really lacked for the last couple years. And the athleticism between Jonathan Jones, who's got 4.3 speed, Christian Gonzalez, who's one of the freakier corner athletes to come out in a long time, and Marcus Jones, who's also freaky athletic. This upside is insane. Coached up by one of the best defensive coaching units in the league and the best defensive coach in Bill Belichick. So it's unproven. We got a lot to see from Gonzalez and Jones, but it's hard not to be more excited about this group than you've been for years. And then all of a sudden, some of these guys that have had to play become really good depth. Jack Jones, if he can get back on the field, showed a lot of promise as a late draft pick, someone with really good playmaking feel, and someone that, at least if he can be out there, can step in as a dime corner and lurk and make some plays. At best, he can step in there as a starter if someone goes down. We'll see what his situation is. My gut tells me is this is going to be one of those things that lingers a little bit, although it was something that was handled directly from, he tried to bring a gun onto an airplane. I don't know all the details. I know Quinnen Williams kind of did something similar a few years ago. He got off pretty light. I don't know if what Jack Jones did was worse or not. Forgive me for not looking super far into it, but I didn't look super far into it because I'm just looking at anything they get from Jack Jones is house money. They're set with these other three guys. Miles Bryant can now be slot depth and a special teamer. And then everyone else is developmental depth. Shaun Wade, Amir Speed, Isaiah Bolden, a couple others in there. Both Speed and Bolden were day 3 picks that both these guys had bad college tape but ran like 4.3s. It's kind of similar to what like Jonathan Jones was coming out a little bit. So they're hoping to strike gold there. We'll see. You also have to mention Jalen Mills as emergency cornerback depth. He definitely wasn't great last year. It sounds like they're going to make him more of a safety here, which he did play full-on safety for the Eagles like 3 years ago. And I like him better at that spot because he's not very fast. But if Jack Jones isn't available and someone goes down, Mills can be at least experienced depth. But then you get to the safety group, and it's interesting. I'm really curious to see how this plays out. I think this is the biggest question really for the team as a whole as far as what they're actually going to get from the free safety. I think quarterback and weaponry have their own questions, but I feel like we at least know what the floor is there. With the free safety, with McCourty leaving, I'm very curious to see, what they're able to get from whoever they play at free safety, which I think is probably either going to be Adrian Phillips or maybe Jalen Mills, but also how much does this impact their scheme and some of that schematic flexibility we talked about. Naturally, they had 4 safeties getting significant reps last year. With McCourty being the free safety, it allowed them to get all of those linebacker snaps from these guys, Adrian Phillips, Kyle Duggar, and Jabril Peppers. My question is, how does that rotation change once you pull McCourty out of the mix without really putting anybody else in there, unless that guy is Jalen Mills, which I'm not going to say is impossible. McCourty himself even entered the league as a corner, and Belichick made that change. Mills, as I said, has played safety before, and I kind of would be curious to see how he plays. He does have ball hawking ability as a playmaker. And we'll see. Like, there's a world where we can put a graphic up there for Jalen Mills, call him the free safety, and then the other 3 are going to resume their role as strong safeties. I think that's again, that's just the big question, and we'll see how that plays out. I do think if they are going to pick one of those other three to be a free safety, it'll probably be Adrian Phillips, because Duggar is just so good down around the box. Peppers, I don't think, has that free safety instincts and ability. I think Phillips, with the experience, could bring the Devin McCourty role. And to be honest, Phillips is about as fast as McCourty was at the end of his career, and he's certainly as good of a tackler and a run defender as McCourty was. So I'm not going to say Phillips couldn't do it, but Phillips has absolutely shown his best coverage ability as that kind of lurking strong safety, buzz zone, curl flat, man up tight ends, that kind of thing. If he were to be playing free safety, I don't think the coverage impact would be quite as high from him. But again, I'm just very curious to see how that plays out. But beyond that, like, we know what we're getting from Kyle Duggar at this point. He is the prototype strong safety, man. His man coverage against tight ends is as good as it gets. He's got enough speed to hang with slot receivers, though not perfect there. He's really good in a hook zone, buzzing down from two shell, lurking, made a lot of plays on balls, made some game-changing interceptions last year. He's an excellent run defender. While he's asked to do a lot, like, he will occasionally get caught as a linebacker where he can get outsized by linemen. And you'll see some badly graded plays in that regard. But, you know, I have no questions about his ability to take on blocks, to tackle, to play physical. He's one of the best run defending safeties in the league. And then Jabril Peppers is just a baby version of Kyle Duggar. Peppers has kind of bounced around a little bit and hasn't really been able to find a home in terms of being a starter anywhere or finding the perfect usage and skill set, other than that 1 year in for the New York Giants, where they used him like this as that kind of quasi linebacker safety. And that's exactly what he is here for the Patriots. Had a really good year last year, kind of under the radar. And I think if this defense and these Patriots start to get a little bit more attention, Jabril Peppers might start to get a little bit of attention. But right now, he's just kind of a sleeper cell player, both in terms of recognition, but also when he's on the field. Like, there's just plays where, especially with the New Jersey rules, like, I feel like people don't often realize, like, either on one hand, like, no, that's not a slot corner, that's a safety built like a linebacker that's going to blow up the run. Or on the other hand, it's like, okay, that's a linebacker. How the hell did he just drop 15 yards in coverage and pick that ball off up the seam? Like, he is just kind of moving around, not getting any attention, but has been really efficient. So really fun safety group. Again, we'll see what happens with the free safety spot. I would even keep an eye on Jalen Mills to be a adequate free safety. With his experience, like, he might be able to see the field back there pretty well. He's faster than an old Devin McCourty back there, so there's a world where he's able to plug into that role. We'll see how that goes. Safety depth, you got Bledsoe developing and Cody Davis as special teams depth. I guess also keep an eye on Brad Hawkins, who was a physical safety out of Michigan. Kind of fits the mold of these bigger safeties, but tough room to crack right now. Again, this group of defensive backs ranks 14th in the NFL for me, and they do rank as a tier 1 run defense. I mean, you have 3 quasi linebackers out there most of the time defending the run from the safety spot, and then you have 3 corners that are really physical and good against the run too. It doesn't get a whole lot better than what the Patriots have in terms of run support from the back end. So what does this all mean? I like this defense. I think they're a ton of fun. They have crazy depth. How far are we going here? Where does this defense rank in the NFL? Well, I've got them 3rd in the NFL for overall defense. 6th in pass defense, 6th in run defense. It is that balance that pushes them up a little bit to 3rd. I mean, I see very few question marks. I think the only true question is, like, can they get great free safety play? But, you know, even last year, McCourty wasn't even all that great. I think they're going to be just fine there. And then if you see steps forward from Uche and Barmore, or not even steps forward, if they can just be what they were in the last month of the year last year, and then these young corners that we really like, Gonzalez and Marcus Jones, if they can hit some of their upside, man, this is going to be an absurdly good defense with the best coaching in the league. And that's the biggest reason why the Patriots come in as the 16th overall team. A lot of people were asking where are the Patriots as we were getting through the Falcons and New Orleans in the low 20s. No, I think even though the AFC is loaded, and even though they're the first team to be revealed in their own division, and the odds are stacked against them, you take the schedule out of it, this is one of the 16 best teams in the league, and certainly a playoff caliber team. Now, I didn't mention the special teams much throughout the video. They rank as a tier 4 solid average special teams. Just because they do have some kicker punter stuff to sort through. They do still have Nick Folk there, which gives them a decent floor, but he was just last year. It is worth noting Marcus Jones as a return man is electric, and he brings a lot to the table there. But they also had an uncharacteristic amount of poorly covered kicks and special teams mistakes last year. So they got to clean some stuff up. I expect they will, but right now I'm not overly optimistic about the special teams, though not concerned. To recap their overall strengths and weaknesses, I see 3 defining strengths. Number 1 being defensive coaching with Bill Belichick. Number 2 being pass rush. They rank 10th in a league with a lot of great pass rushes. Honestly, the way that they scheme them up as well, the combination of these two, defensive coaching and pass rush, might even get their production to be higher than the 10th best pass rush in the league. They ran, I think, the second most amount of stunts in the NFL last year. And Bill Belichick scheming up that many stunts with those playmakers and those athletes, that's terrifying. But on paper, again, 10th in pass rush, which is still really good. And then just overall, like, they have answers to everything on defense. They are a matchup independent defense. You want to run the ball against them? Good luck. You want to throw the ball against them? Good luck. You want to run outside? Nope. They got the D-backs to shut that shit down. You want to run inside? They're going to plug up every single gap and maintain that discipline with thumping linebackers. Play action, they got you covered. Safeties are rotating down anyways. Trying to beat them deep in the passing game, they got speed across the board at corner. Like, I am just so excited to watch this defense, if you couldn't tell. As far as weaknesses go, I mean, you could argue for quarterback. I don't know if quarterback's a weakness. It's definitely not a strength. But I think the lack of dynamism at wide receiver is the biggest thing you're going to circle back to. You know, how many big plays is this team getting? How often is the defense going to be on the field? Are they getting tired? The offense is going to have to pull up its end of the bargain. They don't have to be amazing, but they do have to, I think, at least be that, you know, at least that 22nd offensive rank that we had them at. But we do have to talk wins and losses for this team. It's one thing to get excited about what they are on paper and what they could accomplish this year. And it's a whole nother thing to put them inside the context of their schedule, their conference, and ask, is it enough? And that's a very difficult question. And that's the main reason their Vegas over-under is 7.5 wins. Their Super Bowl odds are 55-1. Their division odds are dead last at plus 800. The odds are not in this team's favor, as I said in the intro. And you look at that schedule, and your instant thought is, holy shit, what is that? That's a monstrosity. They have to open the first 4 games of the year. Philadelphia, Miami, at the Jets, at the Cowboys. Whoa. Okay, then they get a couple of easier games, New Orleans and at the Raiders. Not gimmies, but very much winnable games for them. Picks right back up. They got the Bills, and then they got to go to Miami. Okay, then they get a couple. Washington and Indy coming to town, then the bye week. Got to get those if they want any semblance of a chance. Then here we go again, at the Giants. Chargers coming to town. At Pittsburgh. Kansas City. At Denver. At Buffalo. Jets. What? Yeah, no, this if Bill Belichick can win 9 or 10 games on this schedule, he better get the damn respect he deserves, because this is not easy to get through this gauntlet. I think it's possible. They're going to have to win a lot of close games. The offense is going to have to hold up their end of the bargain, but I will say this, they are going to be in a lot of close games. And getting to watch this defense go up against the quarterbacks on this schedule is going to be incredibly fun to watch. So maybe that's your saving grace, is that the Patriots are fun to watch again. I would bet they do finish with a worse record than a lot of the teams we've previewed, but we don't account schedule into ranking these teams. We're just ranking them how they are as football teams, not who they have to play and how many of those games they're supposed to win. So I'm very curious what you guys think of this deep dive. Did I sell you on the New England Patriots as exactly the most mid team in the NFL, 16th in the league? Are you as excited to watch this team play as I am? Very much looking forward to hearing your comments. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you are continuing to enjoy the series. Please do hit that like button on the way out. Really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe. Got 15 more of these to go. And we'll see you then. Peace out.